Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have OHB is a European space and technology company which trades on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange under the symbol OHB. OHB is the only major pure space player in Europe, responsible for the European GPS alternative Galileo and supplying parts for NASA's new rocket space launch system. Let's welcome its CEO, Marco Fuchs. Nice to see you, Marco. Welcome.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be at the Emerging Growth Conference.
Perfect. Well, the time is yours, and call me back when you're ready for questions, Marco.
Thank you. I will. So I hope you all have access and can see my slides, and I'll just quickly walk you through, and then obviously we have time for questions. So we are a space company, as Anna says. We develop satellites, we build and test them, we work on launchers. We are the biggest supplier into the European Ariane system as a supplier. We do in-orbit operations, and downstream we do exploitation of data, and we generate space-based services. So about 3,000 people work at OHB, a little bit more than that, all over Europe, 15 locations, 10 countries, but very much German-based. So Germany is clearly our origin and also the country where most of our revenues are generated. Since more than 40 years, we are a family-owned company, family-dominated. About 70% of our shares are owned by my family, 30% is in free float. We are one of the three large, so-called large system integrators according to the European Space Agency, ESA's categories. We have always been profitable, dividend paying, and over the years, now being listed for 22 years, more than 22 years, always growing and starting very, very small. First year after our listing, we had 15 million euro revenues, and now 22 years later, we have more than $1 billion. So our revenues are exactly 1 billion last year, 99 million EBITDA, 63 million EBIT. And out of our three divisions, the biggest one is the space systems, where we build the satellites and other technology components. And I'll walk you through that a little bit in more details. If you look back to 2022, we exceeded guidance for profitability. Margins were growing. EBIT margin stood at 6.3%. We had a strong earnings per share of 1.97 euro and dividend at 60 cents. So the three divisions we're working in is the space system, which I said, which basically manufacture satellites for environmental, for weather satellites, for reconnaissance, for telecommunication, and also for scientific activities. In the aerospace division, we are building a micro launcher. We are leading a company that builds micro launcher, the Rocket Factory Augsburg, and we are significantly involved in manufacturing components and structural parts for Ariane, but also Ariane 5 in the past, Ariane 6 in the future, but also a number of other launchers. We have some investment in aero engine components. Our downstream business is in the digital division. So connectivity is a big thing. We build infrastructure for telescopes. We have significant ground system work. Encryption is a big thing. I'll go a little bit into detail on that. Over the last 20-ish years after our IPO, we have constantly built up our product range, starting from radar satellites in 2001 for the German military. When we started telecom satellites, we built a large geostationary telecom satellites, but also smaller one, hyperspectral Earth observation. You see a couple of these things that evolved. Big program for us is weather observation out of the geo orbit with the Meteosat third generation. Recently for the German government, we started also very high resolution electro-optical satellites. We're involved in scientific space, scientific missions, but also space safety, for example, asteroid deflection. So the big challenges of space, obviously, is changing climate. It's the emission situation, deforestation. All these things are obviously a driver by space is becoming more and more significant, and space helps to address those points. And obviously, for the last 15, 16 months, security, military security, sovereignty has become very important. Germany is very much changing its view on defense investments. Another mega trend, obviously, we feel where space can do a significant contribution is the big data, artificial intelligence stuff that goes with a further digitalization. So we look into a very promising future for space activities. We see that the positive trend on the space economy is going very well. There are significant projections out that make us confident that there will be an overproportional strong growth decade in front of us. And we have strong capabilities and a strong heritage to address obviously the upstream market of building satellites for all kinds of different applications, but also the downstream market, as I explained, in our digital area. Upstream, and what we mean by upstream is the manufacturing of space hardware is very strong, obviously, in North America. Europe is a significant market, and we are obviously a significant player in the European domain. If you look at the breakdown in that, we see telecom is significant, 33%. We see the Earth observation being the other major activity, and security as well. And these are all activities where we have a strong presence. Looking at the downstream, the application market, Europe also is a strong player together with North America and the Asian Pacific region. And that obviously is very much driven by SATCOM and navigation. So the budgets are increasing. If what you see here is that the European Space Agency, ESA, ministerial budgets, ministerial conference government budgets has been decreasing over the ministerial conferences of the past decade, from 2014 to 2016 to 2019 to 2022. You see the overall committed budget of the overall ESA programs has increased significantly. In the middle, you see the European Commission space budget for the respective time periods that you see here has increased also significantly. And to the right side, you see the German military expenditures. This is obviously a big debate that Germany, being a partner of NATO that has in the last years always spent less than what the recommended value is, will increase that. Commitment to NATO is 2% of GDP. And on that chart on the right side, you can historically see that Germany had been in the 60s and 70s well above this 2%. So in 1963, right after the Cuba crisis, Germany was almost at 5% GDP defense spending. And then in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, it was around 3 or somewhere between 2 and 3%. So we're on a good way to increase again. We have the most recent numbers I just saw in the media was that this year it's about 1.6%, and for next year, including extra funds that went into defense, it will reach the 2%, also benefiting, of course, space and strategic investments where we potentially benefit. Of course, the European space situation is, because of this geopolitical situation, is very much looking to sovereignty is an important thing. Europe is on its path to establish also its own early missile warning capabilities. We are the prime contractor of leading that in a project called Odin's Eye, but we are the leading company as the prime. And obviously, I mean, this is still a study phase, but the study is almost 100 million. So I think it's in the range of 70 to 80 million, just a study phase, divided over many, many companies. But you can see from that it's a massive program, and we hope that this will end in an implementation. Of course, access to space is a big story. There are many, many initiatives all over the world on rockets. Many micro launchers are projected. We are, of course, also in this market with our rocket factory in Augsburg, where we recently had a very successful second stage test with, of course, the engine working very well, but also the overall upper stage working very well. So we have a working engine since some time, and we are planning to complete the rocket next year. We're also involved in Ariane. I said that as a supplier, we're very happy that Ariane 6 is moving towards its launch soon. So I guess this sovereignty context is very helpful for us. If I look at the specific OHB backlog, what you can see here is a healthy backlog as of now, about 1.8 billion. You see some cycles, higher points always in the year following an ESA ministerial conference, and the last ESA ministerial conference took place in November last year. So what we expect is an increase coming now later this year, but also early next year, so that the order backlog will increase in the next quarters quite substantially. Because this European Space Agency ministerial conference is typically a strong driver in order intake. The German government has made the largest investment as the largest contributor, 21% of the overall, about 17 billion. So that's a significant amount of about 3.5 billion. And we, of course, are competing with other companies to have a significant share of that. If I look at the initiatives that we foresee on European level, there is a telecom constellation underway, Europe's new secured satellite constellation. It's called IRIS², where we are part of the bidder consortium. So we are a core partner there. That remains to be seen how it will be implemented in detail, but we are very optimistic that Germany and German companies will play a good role in implementing this IRIS program. Overall, the strategic, let's say, progress that we have, if I look back a couple of years, we had a strategy in a period that was designed to end in 2025. Actually, we're now working on a new strategy, but just briefly look at a few points. We see us on a good way. We have been able to develop a significant downstream portfolio. We have extended our satellite portfolio significantly, including very big satellites and smaller satellites. Our rocket share is bigger, with a full launcher being in the development. So growth has been founded there very well. We are making good progress on the financial side, as I mentioned earlier. So in our next strategy that will be coming up next, we will continue that path because we find that our unique footprint as a space company, with all these different segments, from building satellites, building rockets, operating satellites, building ground segments, and having downstream applications, helps us to better understand market developments and to be a very, let's say, broadly exposed space company. Just a few slides on the different segments, and I don't want to go into detail much there, but there's a significant investment going on into Earth observation missions. reconnaissance is important. All these so-called application programs where we are always well positioned. Many of those as competitions, yes, but overall we see us very well positioned for complete satellites, but also for payload subsystems where we have a strong foothold in the optical segment. We also offer small satellites. That's obviously a trend of the last years that micro platforms are also a significant market. Out of Sweden, we have a product called InnoSat. We had signed several contracts for various space programs in last year and actually this year. So this is a platform that is very well established in the market, and we were able to also institutionally for the European weather satellite monitoring, EUMETSAT, to be selected. We have a very small platform in the middle, which is called M3, which was selected for a program called IRIDE, funded by the Italian government and implemented through the European Space Agency. First 12 satellites and an option for another 12 satellites. And also our Triton X-Pro product has been selected in the market recently by our partners from Seranis. So this segment is very well served, and it's a very dynamic growth segment for us. In the aerospace segment, I talked about it. We are a supplier as a tier one supplier into a number of different big launcher programs for structural components. We do have our own micro launcher development where we have a significant share in RFA. So this is a promising business for us. Just recently, we successfully completed the integrated stage test in Kiruna in Sweden. So building on that hot fire test, we showed that basically the propulsion system works very well. Of course, there's still work in front of us, putting together the first stage and finalizing the launch pad, which is going to happen out of Saxaford on Shetland Islands from Scotland. This is where we will launch next year. So we're quite excited about this small rocket to come. Our digital business, we have a traditionally strong position in the antenna and telescope business. Ground segments have always been an important part. Recently, we have strong growth in the service part. We have invested in applications there. We have a number of activities. So we have a quite significant and strong growing, much faster than average growing business division in OHB Digital. Looking at the numbers, the last couple of years, of course, you see a pretty flat total revenue, which also was impacted in the years 2020 and 2021 from the COVID slowdown. This year, we're on a good way for our projected revenue of about 1.17 billion euro total revenues. We foresee an outlook, as you can see, up to 1.3 and then 1.5, 1.6 billion in the coming years. Profitability has been growing, though even the top line was flat. So over the last years, we were able to increase significantly our margin with 99 million EBITDA last year, which is a significant growth from 21 to 22. We expect actually a slower growth this year, up to 109 million EBITDA, and then you can see the following years, next year 126 and 147, then in 2025, and so on. On EBIT level, obviously, it's the same trend. So a significant growth last year, 2022, of 34% over the EBIT number of 2021. And this year we are aiming at an EBIT of 70 million, looking also into a more profitable development in the following years. Yeah, looking at the numbers, I guess most of the stuff I touched upon. Backlog is lower than it was last year because of the ESA Ministerial Conference. The first 3 months have been on track. We have been moving on quite well. Net profit has been up about 12%. So we're in a good year 2023, and we will report our half-year results on August 10. So we are quite optimistic about that. So our overall, let's say the overall summary and conclusion that our market positioning is very broad as a leading player in the space industry. We see that the barriers to enter these, let's say, more complex systems is still very high. Our product portfolio has been expanded over the last years, our customer base as well, and also our footprint in the commercial market. So, of course, growth is still foreseen, as you saw with the numbers, and we see that the digital portfolio will also be an activity where we will be able to grow, and obviously resulting in an increased profitability, as you saw on the previous slides. So this concludes my quick presentation with the financial calendar, the outlook. As I said, the next major event will be August 10, the half-year report, and a couple of investor conferences, and then in November we'll have the 9-month report. This concludes my quick overview, and I hand it back, Anna, to you for the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Thanks for the moment.
Thank you, Marco. Great job. Yeah, let's talk about growth. So a lot of growth appears to be caused by a small number of very large constellations. So does OHB participate in those? And what's your view on the market besides or beyond those constellations?
Yeah, of course, constellations are talked about a lot. Of course, constellations are on everybody's mind. We see a number of those. Obviously, the one constellation where we currently are involved is this European IRIS² constellation, where we feel as a core partner we have a good chance of having a significant role. We do had a couple of commercial constellations that were going on, but we saw also some of these things not materialize because of lack of funding, lack of financing. And this is really an open question mark for the overall market. How many and which constellations will eventually really be funded and implemented? I guess what we have to honestly say that is open at the time being. The massive constellation that is out there, a couple of thousand satellites, is the SpaceX constellation Starlink, which is an in-house constellation built and launched and operated by SpaceX. So I think it's promising, but it's not the core of our business ambition. We are a much more diverse space company than constellations.
Now, how do you feel about the flat share price development of recent years, and how do you plan to address it?
You mean the price development, or yeah? I guess obviously we have to stay competitive. Obviously, we are. We believe that there are for a company specialized in space like us, bigger opportunities. We feel we have about the right size to do this. We are not as big as very large companies, but we still are very much, let's say, based on capability. So we believe, I mean, we are welcoming competition. We are welcoming, let's say, increase in efficiency, and we believe that will help us to enlarge our market share.
We have a question from Bern Lowe. He asks, can you comment on the business opportunity for OHB related to the emerging LEO constellations of Rivada Networks, OneWeb, and Amazon Kuiper? Do they have the potential to substantially accelerate growth of OHB? And can you give us a timeline if so?
Yes, thanks. Those three obviously are examples for potential LEO constellations. And yes, of course, we'll see how that will evolve. I think some of these constellations you mentioned have made already decisions how to implement manufacturing, and it is not open anymore for us, but others are still open. So yes, if it comes up, we will of course look very carefully at bidding, but they are not, those are not core part of our planning. So we see this as an opportunistic potential.
Another question from Bern. How do you view the business opportunity in commercial LEO constellations versus government-driven LEO business? How many large commercial constellations are viable aside of SpaceX?
It's a very good question. And I'm not sure how many that really are. I mean, SpaceX has a very strong position. They have a operating services. You can just order it over the internet, it's there, and you can immediately start using it. So they are clearly in the strongest position. They obviously have an in-house manufacturing, so this is not an opportunity for companies like us. I guess there will be government-funded activities like in Europe and maybe elsewhere. So it's questionable. I think it's a question, and not too many is my answer. I don't believe there will be a huge number of constellations viable next to government initiatives and SpaceX.
And Skyla Trujillo wants to know about your financials. Can you talk about your balance sheet? What does it look like? And are you debt-free?
No, we do have some debt in order to finance our projects, the working capital. We have an investment-grade SIN loan since about 10 years. We are, if you look at OHB shareholder structure, you see that 70% is with us. We have never increased capital over the last 22 years with cash injections. So we are basically operating with some debt funding for the ongoing projects, and the investments and the acquisitions have been funded from operating cash flow. So we grew the company out of itself. So when we did an IPO 22 years ago, family had 70%, 70, and now with the company being 16 times the size, we still have 70%. So we proved that we can finance the company out of operating profits and cash flows.
Well, that leads us to our next question by Eric Sawyer. He says 70% insider owned is impressive. So do you have any plans to issue more shares and dilute, or are you sufficiently funded for all upcoming products?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, that's on our mind in the sense of what are the opportunities, what we can do. We would like to finish the rocket factory micro launcher. That will require some investments. Yes, we have seen change in the debt market with much higher debt, much higher interest, cost for debt. So if we have the right opportunities, the right M&A opportunities, we're not principally against that. I believe space will offer significant opportunities for investment, so we're open to that. And as you said, we're at 70%. So we want to stay in the majority, but we do not need to stay at 70%.
And two more questions from Eric. What upcoming projects do you have that are not making money yet? And what's next on the horizon?
Well, obviously, we're in the business for making money. So we're not in the not money-making business. So our plan, our projects are all intended to make money. Sometimes it's difficult to make money. Sometimes if it's a very tough competition, you're far away from making money in the beginning, but eventually projects should turn out to be profitable. And that's the difference from a company like OHB that is money making and let's say positive cash flows since ever, that we are a for-profit organization. So we have to make money and we want to make money, and that's what we do. So we don't do projects just for the sake of it. So on the horizon, I think there are a number of institutional competitions following the European Space Agency Ministerial Conference. So we feel very comfortable with the split between institutional government-related business and commercial business, because that helps us in times like now to have a stable basis for our business also with agencies.
A question from Lorelai Valenzuela. What is a dividend and how often is it paid?
The dividend was 60 euro cent, paid once a year. We had a dividend of about 2%. So once a year, 60 cent was the recent one. But we have not decided how that will continue. But what we do is we always pay dividends. So this is one of the traditional things that we historically have always have done.
And probably our last question due to time from Finley Cheney. Any plans to expand laterally demographically, or are you solely going to remain where you are?
That's a good question. Of course, we would like to expand a little bit our footprint in Europe and for certain activities also beyond that. Clearly, we have a very strong German-centric footprint, so it would be better for us to be stronger in some of our other markets where we are relatively small. So I would like to balance that better. So we are actively looking at that in Europe, in a number of European countries. We see us as well positioned as a European company. Going beyond Europe is more in the aerospace sector as a supplier to others. So we would follow our customers. So we have a significant participation, for example, in Mexico. So North America might be an opportunity with the aerospace activities.
Perfect. Well, Marco, thank you so much for joining us on our conference today. We would love to have you back in the future with some updates.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anna. Thanks to everybody. And I hope to stay in touch. Bye-bye from Bremen. Thank you.
All right. Cheers. All right, everyone, stay with us. We'll be right back with our next presenter.